Jim Rohn said, take care of your body. It's the only place you have to live. And today's guest, Tom Hudson, he wants to ensure that people have a body that they can actually live in. Tom, how are you, my friend? Thanks for
Hi,
joining me
Charles.
today.
Yeah, thank you, Charles, again for doing round two on the podcast, and very much looking forward to talking all things health with you today.
Yeah, when I started really contemplating the reboot, I keep calling it, you were definitely a person on my list that I wanted to have back on here. So I appreciate that you decided to come back. I didn't scare you away or mess it up too bad the first time. So it's always a good sign for what we get to do around two. So um Tom, for those who may have missed the first one or aren't familiar with you, maybe brief introduction of yourself.
Yeah, brief introduction. So I got into health through my own challenges as a young man. I felt the pressures of body dysmorphia, didn't like the way I looked, and the answers I seeked to understand why I felt the way I did, the way that I became quite obsessive to a dangerous level with my exercise and my nutrition as a young man, especially all the way through my teenage years as well. And it was only when the I couldn't find answers anywhere that I needed, so I actually started to take it very seriously and study into health and wellness, and it opened a lot of doors for me. I found a real passion then for what I did, and then it's led me down this line of going past my standard qualifications of being a personal trainer and studying with the Institute of Health for 3 years now in functional and integrative medicine, and it's just totally changed and leveled up my life and insight and my ability of my own story to help others that have got, whether it is severe health dysfunction or they want to optimize their own health. It's all on a spectrum. And now that's what I do, utilizing lab work and bespoke tailored protocols from science-backed research. And yeah, it's a really cool field that I enjoy working in. The human body is a fascinating topic for me.
Yeah, and I can just I'll start. I'll tell people here that I connected with you on LinkedIn, and I am better for it because your daily content is fantastic. And I feel like I think I mentioned this to you a week ago or so, maybe on a post that I feel like I always am trying to learn more myself. And every time I read your content, I feel like I've learned something that maybe I didn't think about or didn't even know. So thank you for that. Um, so have a few segments I want to go through here. This first segment here, I'm calling it the wake up call. So
Yeah.
was there a defining moment when you realized the traditional path to success was costing people their health?
Yeah, you can certainly see it, especially with we've had conversations in the past about social media, and it's easy to look like you're living the dream by what you put out there, and people see from a very small snapshot view. It may look like that someone is crushing life, but I know a lot of people that have chased career success at a huge detriment to their own health. And the chase of aspirational greatness, whether it's self-employed or in an employed role, when you look at some of the things people do, like skipping sleep, eating food on the go, there's an extreme amount of stress that actually no one really knows how to deal with. No one's really taught about stress. No one's really educated on how to de-stress. So then you've got all these compounding factors that are weighing on people's shoulders. And there's a point whereby you and I both, we spoke about it on numerous posts, where burnout's going to occur because the body just can't burn the candle at both ends. And when it comes to health, one very important factor I like to stress to people is you can only perform as good as you feel. And people relying on pushing through, like say this word burnout, and thinking that they can sustain it is it's just not true. The body needs time to rest and recover. And when it comes to your health, if you are not staying dialed into how you're actually feeling, performing, and not relying on things such as caffeine or alcohol as these stimulants and numbing agents to distract or bury your head in the sand, at some point you're going to find that your health's got into a much worse state, and it's far more harder to reclaim your health than it is just to simply try and maintain it and do damage limitation as best as possible.
Yeah, Tom, and I think going back to, I mean, what you just said there and some of your posts, I personally, for me, I was probably even still, I feel like I've gotten my stuff, reasonably together now. Definitely not there all the way though. And, like I said, I'm always learning because as you mentioned that and some of your content that I just saw recently, even, it got me to kind of change something, I think I was doing. And it was every day, every workout for me. I had to actually get after it really, really hard. And I saw your content, your post. I went back and forth with you a little bit, and I started doing this last, week or two, and it's made me feel better. Is that
Awesome.
it doesn't have to be every workout. I'm trying to. I'll always give it 100% of what I have, and I'll still get the workout in. That's not me giving myself an excuse not to do a workout or not to do some activity, but I I love doing my upper body when I work out. And, after reading that post one day, I definitely dialed it in. I made it
Yeah.
more of a rep session with way lighter weight. And
Yeah.
man, it was such a good feeling. And it's, again, all continuing to learn. And I think that's a great point. Doesn't give us a reason to skip, but it gives us a reason to really focus more on the way, what our body's telling us, I'll say. So thanks for that. Good stuff.
Awesome.
Um,
Awesome.
Tom, have you seen in the work you do and clients that you interact with and people in general, you see any patterns, especially in that, I'll say, high performer uh, bucket of people that made you start to rethink how we're defining being healthy?
Yeah, definitely. When we look at people that would class themselves as a high performer, immediately from the get-go, you can see that it's people that put a lot of pressure on themselves and they become a bit of a pressure cooker because they feel they have to one maintain a certain image of maintaining this high flying winner, you could call it mindset or champion mindset in everything they do. And I'm not saying inherently that's a bad thing, but when it comes to one key thing you mentioned there about the workouts is when you see someone who is got a very stressful job or employment position, and then they're trying to ramp on and add on with the growing popularity of, let's say, CrossFit and High Rocks, these high intensity, like high workload, high capacity activities. They then start trying to put them in the mix, and then they start to try doing all the biohacking things that layer on top of more is better, this mindset of more is better. And human physiology just isn't designed to deal with that amount of stress. And it's kind of glorified, unfortunately, because there's more inspirational quotes, there's more people that have become famous from telling people to, work through boundaries and push 24/7. Now, there's a time and a place for that. I'm not saying we should never push ourselves because it's like we've spoken in the past previously, the comfort zone is the biggest killer of dreams in the world without a shadow of a doubt. But it's about knowing when to push and when to just apply off the gas a bit more on the brakes. And as you said, managing that load intensity with your workouts. Manage it, and it's a great example. You don't have to do every workout where you're trying to push max numbers on everything you do. You could do things where it's more of a low intensity movement based protocol. And you see such power when that switch goes off in someone's head of, oh wow, so I don't need to be constantly like driving myself into the floor to get benefit because I know myself and you'll have found this out in your years of training. There's an inverse U relationship on, returns of investment in terms of exercise. When it gets to the top of the peak, there's a point where more isn't better. More is going to make your performance worse. And managing that fatigue load, that, the output to input ratio is incredibly important for finding that sweet spot and realizing what gives you the best ability to get adaptation without pushing you into the point of injury risk, fatigue, burnout, and then that obviously cascades into every other area of our life when we get brain fog or we get moody and we just feel tired, sore. So there's a huge correlation without a doubt, and I think social media is part of the problem because people have dialed into the seeing like the viral videos and the real cinematic cinematology, um, edgy looking videos with like a really powerful quote playing in the background of someone who just looks like they're pushing themselves 100%, and it gets people's attention. They're like, I need to do that. And again, zoom out, you're looking at 0.001% of someone's day-to-day life and their activity, and yet that isn't what they're doing 100% of the time. So I think it's very important. Yeah.
Yeah, Tom, you touched on a couple things there, and it takes me back a little bit, but I remember when I tried, and I was older at the time when I started, but CrossFit at the time. And I give kudos to all who do it and work out that way. But for me, at that point in my life, especially, I was managing to get 2 to 3 workouts in a week. And I am not going to lie, I was always injuring myself.
Yeah.
And I realized for me now, staying healthy so I can move is
Yeah.
as important about moving because you know, I just can't stand to be on the shelf per se, right? And
Yeah.
I just, that's Tom, I kid you not, my workout equipment for me right now that I'm using is I have a bench, some kettlebells up to 50-pound dumbbells, and that's, you know, I know for me that's what I need to be at right now because that gets me going and it keeps me healthy and uninjured, I'll say. So, no, I think what you're putting out there is really good. And I think people need to hear the other side of that because, to your point, so many people see that glorified
Yeah.
vision of, I live here in Philadelphia, so I call it the Rocky Balboa
Yeah.
mentality, man.
Yeah.
They see it all the time, so good stuff. I think the other thing that you're doing a really good job with, though, and I in this segment here, the blood work and real data.
Yeah.
Tom, I think me being a data geek by my profession and what I do in real life, I think that's probably why another reason why we connected so well, seeing that approach you take. So, why is blood work so important when it comes to our personal health?
Yeah, now it is certainly getting more popular. It's nowhere where it needs to be at the minute, but the best phrase I ever heard, or the best phrase that I made sense in my head, is that your blood doesn't lie. So, and I'm not calling my clients or people I work with liars, but your blood is the most true and honest reflection of your current status of health at that moment in time. And where it gets the best results is we combine that objective data of the lab results. The more labs that we test, like if it's 70 plus biomarkers, that's really useful information. Then you combine and layer it with subjective information. So from I call it my body operational testing quiz or the BOT. In the UK, when you test your car, it's called an MOT. So
Mm,
I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to use the BOT for the body. And you layer those two things together and the correlations, the patterns, and the insights you get to someone like the correlations that people just haven't seen or dialed or even thought there's a possibility. And it's just so interesting when you get those two pieces of data because then you can actually show, okay, so what foods does it look like your nutrient deficiencies are lying in? Where is it looking like? Have you got raised liver markers with inflammation? How's your current hormone panel looking? Is it got, is your androgens at a good level or are they actually suppressed? Do you have high androgens, but you also have high sex hormone binding globulin, which is preventing them binding to receptors optimally? You start to get all these pieces of the puzzle, and like you say, the more data you have is like having more pieces of a puzzle that you're working with. Instead of looking at a 1,000 piece puzzle and you've only got 5 or 6 pieces to play with, you've got all of a sudden hundreds of pieces that are in front of you that you can start putting together and you get a much clearer picture. And that for me is being able to give someone the best chance. There's no guarantee, but the
mm,
absolute best chance of improving someone's not only health status, but if they're an athlete,
mm.
optimizing performance. If there's someone who has a health challenge that has been debilitating them for years, especially gastrointestinal health, one of my big areas of focus that I love working with, you can see huge improvements because they've just always relied on a supplement that they've probably been suggested by Karen at the office, who says, "Oh, it worked for me, and it's going to work for you." Don't want to knock you there, Karen, but there's a lot more to it than I bought this off Amazon and this worked for me and it'll work for you. Again, there's a lot of that on social media, and you want to get specific and understand that one man's food is another man's poison. So what you may need could be very tailored specific for what you need and not what Karen was doing because you're completely different scenarios and challenges at life. So that's why I love it. I mean, like you say, I'm exactly a data geek with it. It kind of is my way of being able to go, oh, this is like a really unique puzzle I've got to solve, and having that data and information is just gives you the next level to be able to truly help. And with clients I've worked with, it has had some really game-changing results, and it's just testament to the fact that it works.
Yeah, and you probably saw when you went into the Karen part of your answer, I just couldn't help but my, I'm glad she's not here right now. So I brought my wife on camera right now. You guys would probably take an hour and a half to just talk about that, the supplements and the
Yeah,
Karens. One of the things, and my wife and I not being obviously professionals or personal trainers, just two people who've done the work and got
yeah.
healthy. We just try to help people with what we know, but I have a tendency to not care and I won't argue with people. It's up to you if you don't want to listen.
Yeah.
You know, God bless her. My wife, she'll dig in and she'll tell people you're full of shit and she doesn't care. And I wish I could be a little more like that sometimes, but I had to laugh. And Tom, I don't know if you call it this over there, but God bless them, my grandparents who unfortunately weren't the most healthy people. But when you mentioned BLT over here in the States, BLT, as soon as you said BLT, it's bacon, lettuce, and tomato. That's the
I
same.
said BOT.
What's
If it,
that?
'cause I said BOT, bot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I was like,
because BLT, man, it means the exact same thing here. Exactly the same here.
so
So,
see where my mind went though, right?
yeah.
As soon as you said no, that
Yeah, yeah,
that's that that's funny, but yeah,
yeah,
BLT, I was like, oh my God, that's hilarious because BLT, good
yeah,
good stuff. So Tom, when you look at the blood work,
yeah.
and I know for me and my job, when we look at data, we're always looking at certain points, looking to see from an analytical perspective, what are some of the common themes and in what you do, what are some of the common themes or probably better stated, what are some red flags you see in people's lab work that you look and are surprised because on the outside people look fine.
Yeah, great question. There's a few things that patterns that I've seen more recently with people that I've taken an interest from what I post about. And mismanaged blood sugar is a big one. That can be, and most people don't really realize it. They wouldn't really think they've got an issue with it. But when you see someone with the likes of, mid-afternoon crashes with or brain fog or energy issues, especially in that transitioning from morning to afternoon, big highlighter. We've got usually now increased levels of liver inflammation because we are exposed to so many pollutants, contaminants, chemicals. I mean, the amount of chemicals that have been introduced alone within probably the past 50 years has, I'd like to probably presume, nearly doubled. Is a rough estimate. I'm not saying that's a fact, but we've got all this new exposure to things that we haven't had exposure to previously. So
Mm.
liver markers tend to be raised, and people's in general, is a big buzzword, stress. People's stress hormones are typically elevated again because of the lifestyle we're living, probably the feelings of modern pressure, probably paying too much attention to what the news is telling them, and these are all just layering and layering pressures in that takes toll on our physiology. Not only this, I mean, a huge one I speak about recently, and you've seen my content around men's testosterone levels, like declining really quite worryingly on a heavy trend within, again, the past 50 or so years. And when we look at it from that perspective, like men's hormone health is a true reflection on how they feel and perform. Hence why it's so important that as men we try to protect it or support it as best as possible. But there's that missing link again of not many people get tested regularly enough to know where they're currently at, and they'll be guessing or they'll resort to thinking that it is low, and they may jump on testosterone replacement therapy when they may not need to, or be dosing it wrong because they don't actually know what dose they need. So there's many like correlations that we can see when we do look at someone's blood, and that's why it's so important, like I say, to do that body operational testing quiz. Because when you ask someone for subjective questioning on like what's your diet look like, How do you feel? What symptoms have you noticed? Like, do you wake up in the morning with morning wood, we call it in the UK, or erections? That's a good intel sign of men's sexual health function. So there's just these really key pieces that we start piecing together, and then realizing that those patterns are a true trend that we're seeing with people nowadays. And again, big part of it's education, giving people the insight and the feedback to implicate and bring in dietary changes or lifestyle changes, which are going to help them start to feel better within hopefully as short a time space as possible.
Yeah, and you're reading my mind here because the next segment I definitely want to get in more deeper into the testosterone conversation. You mentioned there in your answer about, the trend and how it's, just in general, the health trend over the last years. And I, Tom, and I don't know 100% if this is true, but I even have read stuff that for here in the United States, it's even worse as far as the chemicals
Mm. Yeah,
than you guys have over there in the UK. It's, and again, I don't know locally where you're at and where you live, but it's, Tom, amazing to me is I probably within a 1 mile radius of my house, there's 4 to 5 donut shops,
yeah,
every type of takeout fast food place you can think of. And I have to go a 2 mile radius now, but I'm grateful. A new market has opened called Wild Fork,
yeah.
and it's all fresh game, wild game meats. And, you
Nice.
know, I got myself a membership to this because you buy a membership and they do free delivery. So I'm usually ordering from there a few times a week with, bison burgers, elk steak,
Nice.
things like that. So yeah, so it's helpful. So the testing, though, I want to really serious here and maybe as simple as you can, but for anybody that hears this part, how should someone get started getting that proper panel done? And the reason I'm asking it kind of, and I want to be super specific, is because I know here in the States, there are insurance issues that you have to jump through hoops, and I
Yeah.
think it's sad. But I just want people to hear, what do you recommend that they should be speaking to their healthcare provider about they want tested?
Yeah, it's a very difficult conversation sometimes because obviously our medical systems differ here in the UK and the US. So in the UK, we sort of have the same challenge, but not to the case of it going through insurance, where you can go to your doctor, you can ask them to run a blood panel. But there's also a bit of resistance to them really wanting to run one for you unless you've got a clear reason why. And saying, "Oh, I just want to check it to make sure," they'll probably just say, "Oh, well, unfortunately, cost, time, we can't do that." And this is the problem that we have. Whereas when you think that you have, if you can cross correlate, I think a real good benchmark of going in with your signs and your symptoms. So if you know the signs and symptoms of low testosterone, or you're curious, you can reach out and or check my content out. There's a number of things I've listed, but you go in with a bit of a diary of, I've had these symptoms for X amount of time, could possibly correlate to XYZ, let's say low testosterone in this case. And, you know, they shouldn't have any objection to running those tests for you because it's your health and you're inquiring about running them labs. And if you're doing it through your primary care practitioner in America and you find that you're getting no results, I would then just, yes, there is a costing clearance here where you go to a private lab that will happily test you with no questions asked. Is it worth it? 100 million and 10% would I say it's worth it. Don't rely on just getting a door shut on you because it may be the cheaper route and thinking, oh, without they've said no, I'm not going to do it. No, it's your information, it's your data. You should go and get those answers. You should always be willing to think, okay, if they're not willing to help me, I'm going to go and find someone that is willing to help me. And yes, you may have to pay for a private test. In the UK, there's a number of labs that I partner with, and some can arrange a home phlebotomist to come to your house and do a 74 biomarker panel for just under £200, I think it works out at, which is a pretty fair price.
Mhm.
And you get really good insights from it. So when I'd say to people is every year you should be trying to aim to run your labs every on a yearly basis, just from a health perspective, just to see if things are moving in the right direction. Or again, if you have a serious challenge or you really want to improve, let's say, for example, liver health, kidney health, because you could have it'd be at risk. You could have a genetic phenotype in your body which predispositions you to a certain dysfunction or disease. Therefore, running more regular labs is going to be even more important for you because to stress that, genes load the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. So the better you manage lifestyle, the less chance you have it operating those genes that put you at a certain risk. So yeah, the message to everybody is bang on the door. Take your information, take all your signs and symptoms, be very crystal clear with what you're experiencing. And if you feel like you're not getting the help through the ordinary channels, just go to a private lab. There's a number of them in the US, like there is here in the UK. They're very easy to find online. Find one that's local to you, and yeah, run your labs, get them done. And it's the data you get and the insights and the answers to questions that you may have that you may feel you haven't had answers to for years and years can suddenly become much more clearer with the right help and guidance when you take that step. So it's 100% a very wise thing to do.
Yeah, Tom, yeah, thanks. I think that message, I hope out of this whole conversation, people really, really hear that and take that seriously. And listen, I get it. I think for me now, being in my 50s, and the price you said, that's what I ended up paying around to get my labs done.
Yeah,
It probably was like 170 US
yeah,
dollars. I will tell anybody from the States that's listening, though, especially, and Tom and I will get into this in the next segment here about testosterone. But one thing to keep in mind is if you're a man and you are thinking about your testosterone levels, um, they'll bundle that in to your treatment. So it's kind of, I know for me, what I do now is my whole treatment protocol is, I pay weekly, a certain amount weekly, but that includes everything that I get done. And that includes labs now, like once every like 6 to 8 weeks that they
yeah.
do labs. So good stuff. But yeah, spend the money on your health, people, because trust me, you'll be better off for it. So this topic is definitely something for me getting into this, Tom. That's been near and dear to me now for the last probably 6 months to a year. But the whole testosterone conversation, I mean, I think it's criminal what we're seeing here in men. And I don't know in the UK, but if you try and as a man in the United States to deal with this through your primary care, stop doing it. I mean, I'll say that now, and I'm not a doctor, but stop doing it with your primary care because they will not, you will not get the results you're looking for. When I tested, I'll share this with you, my T level was 340,
Yeah,
350.
flow.
And technically, here
It's in range.
300 to 1100 is the range, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, God, I can't imagine if I was below 300 what I would have felt like, Tom.
I that's weird you say that. I had a guy come to me in the gym this morning who he knows me and he said, "Can you just have a look at the labs I'd run from the doctors?" And his testosterone was 218,
Jesus.
and yet they were saying it's in range here, and I was like, "It is not in
No,
range. It's on its arse," is the polite way I put it.
that,
And this is the problem. So when we talk about ranges, right? Ranges are based on the average population, and the average population isn't in a very good state of health. And that, don't panic. I don't want this to panic anybody, but this is unfortunately the case. And that's where the ranges become so broad. So if you imagine that the range here is, let's say where my hands are in between here is the green. So let's talk testosterone where it's like 300 to 1100, right? So if you fall in there, you're in the green apparently and you're fine. But if you're on the outside of that, it's like you're in the danger zone. So you go straight from fine to danger zone within that straight flip. Whereas in functional ranges, we work in ranges which are much narrower. And then there's channels, so that's like really that's optimal. Okay, so that's slightly low, we need to pay attention to that, or slightly high. Okay, when we get broader again, it's like, okay, we really need to stop paying attention to this. Why are we at these levels? And then after that, that's when you're at, right, the alarm bells are ringing now. You really need to pay attention to this. So that's the unfortunate thing because if they actually went with functional ranges, they'd be swamped by how many more people would be out of range. It would be exponentially more people. So I can understand why they do it, but really would it be better to advise people like this is the ranges that we work with? However, when we've looked at studies, this is optimal. You want to really be aiming for that if you want to be at peak health, we could call it. So
Mm.
yeah, that's certainly something that we need to talk about. And I'm so happy that you've brought that you got the right help and support that you needed because I'm a huge advocate of that. I'm not saying I am the right help for you. I never will proclaim that I'm the right help for everybody, but certainly go and get help and guidance and support from the right people because, as you mentioned there, you get one roll of the fucking dice in life. So the one thing that carries you through life and your ability to enjoy your relationships, your hobbies, your passions, to excel in everything you do and make the best memories is your health, right? So that's why this conversation is so important, that especially for men, is testosterone, because that's the main primary hormone that gives us survive. It's our very base of our ancestry. So it's an incredibly important topic that we talk about and get more awareness out there for people.
Yeah, and Tom, the thing I would add to that is be your own advocate and do your own research. I know, and look, I think I'm fortunate from this regard because what I do and I've been involved in healthcare data analytics for my life, I am able to at least have a conversation. I know when I spoke to my primary care about this, I mean, it was laughable the reasons he told me that this was a bad idea. And, that day, like you said about a diary, Tom, I was ready. I had every study I could cite that I basically said, you're full of shit. And, he basically said, "Oh, so now you're the doctor?" I said,
Yeah,
and Tom, I'll never forget this. I just looked at him and laughed. I said, "I'm not a doctor." I said, "But sad part is I might now be a better doctor than you." And that was it. But yeah,
yeah,
be your
yeah.
own advocate. Tom, for the guys listening though, because I know it's a little bit taboo and it's uncomfortable for guys, because every guy I talk to, and I listen, I tell them all the time, listen, go, it's not, they right away think, oh no, I'm fine, man. I have sex, I'm good, and I don't need that, right? They all think it's about that kind of stuff. What do you think as far as for men? What are the signs that they should be looking at when they should really start to get tested?
So yeah, the signs for us as men with low testosterone, one of the biggest one of the biggest ones that we need to be paying attention to is strength and progress in the gym can be a great metric. Do you feel like you're able to push the weight that you used to, especially at the peak of your life, or do you feel like you're in the peak of your life and your strength is slowly decreasing? That's something to certainly pay attention to. A really easy biofeedback marker is waking up with morning wood or erections from sleep. Big correlation, just being able to look into that. When we look into men's mental health, how's your moods? How are you presenting in your day-to-day life? Do you feel driven? Do you feel like really withdrawn, really low mood status? Do you feel like life in general is quite overwhelming? Can be a really useful sign to pay attention to. And as you know, one thing you do is like your mood swings. So do you feel like you have better regulation and control of your emotional systems? Because there's a really fascinating study actually, and whether it's cause effect, it's kind of still being a bit investigated. But when we look into men's testosterone levels, funnily enough, when we look into when people take performance enhancing drugs and the term roid rage, which you're probably familiar with,
Mm-hmm.
and people saying, "Oh, elevated levels of testosterone are what are causing these like mood swings and roid rage reactions." However, when you look into, I think there was a Swedish prison study whereby they found that the most violent prisoners actually had the highest levels of estrogen and probably lower levels of testosterone, which is really quite fascinating. So then you could argue the case of, okay, so people that take exogenous testosterone, they're getting more aromatase activity converted through to estrogen, and then that's what's driving the roid rage. So it's really a huge and really quite an in-depth topic. And coming back to it again is sometimes with us as men, we could actually have fine levels of testosterone, but elevated levels of, like we say, sex hormone binding globulin, which is preventing them androgen receptors from binding. So then we've got plenty of testosterone in serum or circulation, but not enough is able to bind and elicit the effect that it needs to have on our physiology. So yeah, coming back to like a bit of a summary for the signs and symptoms is mood state, emotional status, erections, how's your strength and your performance in the gym, how's your recovery, and just paying attention to that the basic pillars of what as men we actually want to be able to go out and do, and then tying it into okay, so if you've noticed that you do have, not great sleep, you notice that you're more overweight, you're noticing that your mood status is lower, what factors can I bring in to change that current situation? Because small lifestyle changes can have massive needle movers on supporting health. So making sure you're prioritizing your sleep, making sure that you're at least hitting your protein and fat targets because both are essential, and then balancing your carbohydrates depending on your days of training, not training, your dietary preference. Managing your stress, so how do you actually de-stress? How do you go about looking at that? If you've got excess body fat, can you reduce that down to a healthy level? Because we've seen obesity trends probably kind of rise at the detriment to testosterone levels falling.
Mm.
And a number of studies have shown that. So even really stupidly small, simple things like cotton-based underwear, right? A lot of people overlook these really small things I'm about to bring in, but these are really important ones. So cotton-based underwear instead of polyester-based fabrics. Natural fabric's going to be better. Do not keep that in your pocket next to your testicles. Phones, smart devices, they emit electromagnetic frequencies, which again have intercorrelation and affect our hormone and gonadal function in many areas of the body, not just in our sex hormone function. Filtering your tap water, so drinking well filtered tap water, because more and more tap water is becoming more contaminated with the oral contraceptive pill, which is what us as men we don't want to be touching with a barge pole, but just being aware of it. And being exposed to aluminium free deodorants, not spraying cosmetics directly on your skin. And there's a number of things that you can just bring in your day-to-day life that can have a huge improvement on your levels in a very short space of time if you adhere to them.
Yeah, Tom, and everything you just went through there, and I don't know if it's you or me or if somebody else has invented this already, but with the phone, I was thinking about this because I won't lie, I was definitely guilty of keeping my phone in my pocket, and I still sometimes will do it, and I always go, "Oh crap," and I grab it out of there. But I was thinking it'd be great if we could invent a something for your pocket that actually blocks the blocks it, keeps your testicles safe from whatever your phone's emitting. I don't know if anyone's ever done it, but probably be
There
a
is,
cool invention.
yeah, no, there is a few companies. There's some that have brought it out, but I saw some studies on some of them that didn't have the effects that they claimed they did. But one of them that did, if I remember the name from memory, can't remember the company's name, but you can buy like necklaces and you can buy the cards which have sort of a device which naturally absorbs the EMF from because we our body's naturally producing the EMF field, but it helps to absorb anything that is coming in extracellularly from phones, 5G, smartwatches is a big one, Wi-Fi, and would I tell everybody to invest in 100%?
Mm,
You'd be surprised the difference people can feel from brain fog, clarity, not only hormone health, but all these other pillars of health when they start to manage their EMF exposure. And a really interesting thing is, right, when people don't believe that this is an issue, look at trees that are close to like 4G and 5G towers.
mm,
If you notice them, they're all dying, right? And if when you read up, when you go up to like a phone tower, there's a massive sticker at the bottom usually for indicating like a warning to health,
mm,
right? If that isn't a wake up call to realize technology is great, but it's coming at a cost and bringing in exposure. Watch previous generations, we're the first in our line being exposed to it. So we're
mm.
the guinea pigs, right? We are the guinea pigs, and that's what really is when you look at it. Like it's quite a horrible way to look at it, but you need to be very dialed in and think. If you live near a cell phone tower, if you live near giant power pylons, you're going to be exposed to a lot of EMF. And if you ever want to know how much, you can buy them EMF readers. I don't know if you've seen them online. They're quite good, really useful to use. And if you've got persistent health challenges, this is going off on testosterone, but if you've got persistent health challenges which don't seem to remediate regardless of what you do, look into your environment such as that. So grounding is a really powerful thing to do, but using EMF blocking devices, what we spoke about. I don't remember the name of the company, but if you Google search them, they are there, and they're worth investing in. And yeah, trying to mitigate and reduce as much exposure. Like a big one is like people charging phones in the bedroom next to the bed. Don't do that. Make the bed a tech-free space. Make the bedroom a tech-free space. Get the TV out, get the smartphone out, charge it in another room. And I've had clients do this, and their sleep improved dramatically within a very short space of time because they never correlated the sleep issues with the charging of devices close to the bed when they're trying to be at rest. So again, and that's another. I'm going off on a tangent, but it's something that can be very simple to do.
Man, I'm guilty of that, Tom. I plug my phone in every night before I go to bed. That's kind of I plug it in and that's it. It charges near my bed. That's interesting. But
Yeah.
hey, I'm glad you went on the tangent because in this next segment, because this is something I think that you're doing a lot of, and I see people doing it. I think you do a lot more of it, but this whole the free game, right? You're giving away so much, an incredible amount of education and guidance in your content, and I, I guess the question is why? I mean, is what's the goal of putting that kind of information out there daily for people that you don't even work with directly, Tom?
To get people talking, and for me personally, people have shared information with me in the past that has really changed my life and helped me out a lot. So yeah, I mean, I understand that some business gurus and people say to gatekeep some of your best content, and deliver it to. But all I'm doing is I'm giving people pieces of the puzzle. So I'm giving that information out there, and that's cool. I'm really glad I can help people. And then I guess it gets people more interested because then they want to know how to play with these pieces of the puzzle. How do they put them together? They've got the information, but putting them together is a different story altogether. So that's whereby that's when they've got a bit of education and it sort of gives them a bit of a base understanding. Because as a coach, that is one of my primary functions. I'm not there to just, sort your shit out. You can put it able to just then go, I don't want you to be my client forever. That if a coach wants you to be a client forever, then the coach isn't doing their job, right? The coach is there then using you as a cash cow and basically doing symptom management. Whereas the role of a coach that cares is, I want to educate you, I want to give you the results that you need, and then be able to go, awesome, we did great work, these are the results we got. And now back to the open world and you're going to be rocking this roller coaster on your own, basically. So for me, yeah, I do share quite a lot and shouldn't I? It's up to debate. Some people say I should, some people say I shouldn't. But me personally, it's the kind of content I like talking about. I don't want to just be putting things out there that look cool and edgy. And if it can spark conversation and get people talking, get people interested in paying attention to their own health, because for me, it's the one greatest treasure in life that everyone should really appreciate and not take for granted, then I can at least go to bed at night and realize that I may have had impact on somebody that helped them in a way that, whether I know it or not, but it's helped them out.
Yeah, Tom, I think you're doing amazing work with that. I mean, like I said, we've been connected for probably a little over a year now, and you're one of the people that, and I don't do it with everybody that I'm connected with, but you're a person and a page that I have on my little list of, hey, I want to check out what Tom put up today. So I definitely make it a point to actually search and seek out your content on a daily basis because and again, with time, I don't have tons of time to do that, but it's worth it to me because I feel like I learn from it. Yeah, it's really, really good stuff. I hope more people connect with you and not only take advantage of your free content, but also start to maybe work with you. So Tom, I've been doing a new kind of thing here with this relaunch. I call it rapid fire. I come at you with a few questions, statements, and first thing comes to your head. I was thinking about this first one because I see some of what you post and I'm wondering if this will be the answer. But first one, best book you would recommend regarding health and or mindset to people.
Oh, great question. I actually really liked one of the. It's, it's a very simple book. It was called Supergood by Dr. William Davidson, and it's really quite easy going and tries to break it down at a very base level. There's some more complex ones, but from a good one to listen to just in general is that one.
Nice. And I was trying to think about it because I've seen some of the books the Ross Edgley books you've
Yeah,
been
Ross
reading.
Edgley.
I
Yeah.
was wondering if it was going to be one of those, but I'll have to check out the one you just mentioned.
Oh, without a doubt, though, Ross Edgley's books are, in terms of just a general oversight for like training, health insight information, 100% on that top pillar. Like those books are solidly good suggestions as well.
Nice. Nice. See that? More free info you're giving out, Tom. Good work. Um, what's one thing you used to believe about health that you no longer do?
Yeah, I always thought more was better. I.e., like the more workouts were better, the more extreme you went with the supplementation, the better. And that's not the case.
Hmm,
Completely not the case.
nice. What's your favorite non-negotiable health habit you practice daily?
Do you know something? It is for me. It's starting my day off by training. On days that I train, I love to do not always a really difficult workout, but go and do some form of movement because it sets my day up and enables me to feel like I'm dialed in for the rest of the day and focused in. That non-negotiable of doing a bit of movement, even if it's sometimes a more challenging workout than other days, that bit of sweat equity that I invested was, a really great way to start the day.
Nice. Yeah, I try now that it's summertime over here and the weather is warmer. I try as I get out of bed, I come down the stairs and walk right out the door and do a mile walk. That's kind of how I kick off the day most days, I'm happy to say.
Nice.
Um, what would you say is the most underrated pillar of health that people overlook?
Sleep. Straight away, sleep. Um, I could give you the world's best diet and the world's best workout plan, but if you sleep like crap, you're going to get very little to no good results from the other two. You are going to be always in a case of trying to fight a fight, is what I'll say. So sleep without a shadow of a doubt, 100%.
Nice. And I love how quick that just came, that flowed right away. That was it. Sleep. That was good. Tom, I heard somebody say this about sleep. I actually thought it was good. You know how people say I'll sleep when I'm dead?
You're completely wrong.
Yeah, I heard a guy said with that attitude, you
You will be
sleep,
dead.
you will be dead. Yeah.
Yeah.
So good stuff. Last one here. What's the best advice you've ever received?
Yeah, the best advice is you are your own best project you'll ever work on. So whether you challenge yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, be willing to do it. Go out there and set yourself ambitious goals, targets. Make sure that you are in a physically capable position to handle everyday life. Make sure that you are in control of your emotions, that you are able to regulate and know when to put foot on the gas and when to dial it back. Know when to, show up for those that you care about, and just be able to live a life with as little regret as possible and as many memories as possible.
Man, couldn't have said it any better. That's a great way to end it, Tom. So again, Tom, how besides the free stuff I get on LinkedIn, how can people get a hold of you? How can they connect with you outside of say LinkedIn?
Yeah, awesome. So as you mentioned, I'm on LinkedIn. You just search Tom Hudson, and I'll probably come up as one of the only searches. But if not, just hopefully you'll find me on there. I'm on Instagram, which is at Zenith Health Coaching, which is my Instagram profile. On both of those profiles, you can sign up to the email list that I do, which is like a bi-weekly email. And I'm slowly trying to build up my YouTube channel with some in-depth talks on topics, which is at Zenith Body, I think it is. And I need to put more time into that, I must admit. Studies and work have kind of taken a head on a back step of that. But yeah, and anything that comes up from on those pages, of course, if you want to reach me via email, my email's available on LinkedIn as well for a direct conversation. But yeah, I mean, you don't necessarily feel like you have to reach out to me to be a client. If you just got questions or burning, you want to have a quick bit of insight on a topic, I'm always happy to chat. I'm not saying I'll always answer back immediately if I'm busy, but if I can at least give you some insight, which is going to help, and then get the conversation rolling if you want to look into it further, that's where to find me.
And I will make sure to add a lot of this in the show notes so people can just click and get a hold of you. And maybe we could, start driving more people your way. And again, not even if they're not going to be clients. I just think these conversations, like you said, are super important. And I
Yeah,
think the more we surround ourselves with people that are in this type of space and care about their health,
yeah.
I think it will be better off for it. So, Tom, again, I appreciate all that you do. Really glad that we caught back up again. Looking forward to sharing this with everybody. For those who take a listen or watch this, I hope you get as much out of this as I did. And I meant what I said. I get something out of Tom's content usually every day. So I think you will too. So give him a follow. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Appreciate it, Charles. Thank you, mate.
This has been the Bare Essentials. Thanks for listening. And remember, never hibernate on your goals.